Welcome to the Gallant Few, the Rangers podcast, who are proudly sponsored by the Insurance Practice. The team at the Insurance Practice specialise in family protection and life insurance, and who better to look after you and your loved ones than fellow Rangers fans. Check out the website at www.theinsurancepractice.co.uk or contact the Gallant Few for more information.
Hello and welcome to a new show here on the Gallant Few Rangers podcast called Generation Bear. Each show we will have a guest on to discuss their hero from the generation they started following, the Gers, and who cemented their love for the club. This could be a player or a manager, and we'll also discuss memorable moments on or off the pitch that led to them becoming the hero of each Generation Bear. My name is Scott Carney and I will be your host for this show. Joining me tonight, it only seemed right that for the first guest of the new show is none other than Mr. Gallant Few himself, Colin MacDuff. Hello, Colin.
Hi, Scott. Thanks very much for having me on. I'm really excited about this show and these shows coming up.
Magic. So, Colin, you have chose the Dutch dynamo himself, Mr. Ronald de Boer. So just briefly, and not giving too much away about the games you've decided to talk about on the show tonight, why was Ronald de Boer the hero of your generation?
So, I think like most people, I've taken my football influence from my Uncle Gordon. My dad's followed Rangers since he was a wee boy, got me into Rangers. But my Uncle Gordon was he was like my go-to guy for football and knowledge. Obviously, in the 90s and early 2000s, we didn't really have worldwide access to the Ecuadorian under-15 leagues like we do now. It was very, football came in snippets for what I remember. And I remember I was only 7, pushing on 8 when Ronald de Boer signed, and I remember my Uncle Gordon being so excited about this. And this was around the time I was really starting to get into football. So it's, probably, I'm being led. I'm being led into my favourite player at this point just because I knew my Uncle Gordon was my football guy. And then when I started watching Rangers games, and it seemed to be every time I watched Rangers, whether it be highlights of a game in the telly, he just always stood out. He was just always doing something, and I already had in my head that he was something else. And then my earliest memories of watching Rangers are all about Ronald de Boer.
Yeah, well, as I say, it was I got a wee bit of a shock when you said De Boer at first, mate, to be honest, because it made me realise that I'm that wee bit older than you. And I was like, De Boer, really? You mentioned that you were 7 or 8 when he signed for the club. So I'd have been 12 or 13. So I remember De Boer coming as well. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a hell of a signing for Rangers to be making, to be fair. But yeah, that's good. So just before we get started, I'll just give you a bit of background on De Boer. So he was born on the 15th of May 1970 in the Netherlands, and has a twin brother, Frank, both who went on to become for club and country. De Boer was selected for the Ajax youth programme in 1983 at the age of 13 and made his professional debut for Ajax in 87. De Boer spent most of his playing career at Ajax, making a total of 307 appearances over 2 spells at the club, scoring 63 goals, which also included a Champions League winners' medal in 1995. In 1999, De Boer joined Barcelona, but after a less than successful 12 months at the Spanish Giants, De Boer decided to join the Dutch Legion at Rangers under manager Dick Advocaat. From 2000 to 2004, he made 129 appearances for Rangers in all competitions, scoring a total of 40 goals. His honours from his time at Ibrox include a League Winners' Medal, a League Cup medal and 2 Scottish Cup medals. And of course, he was part of a very, very famous treble-winning team in 2002-2003, which, spoiler alert, we may come on to talk about. So, Colin, that is a brief background on De Boer. He did no bad, really, didn't he?
He didn't half. I think any player winning the European Cup or Champions League, it's the ultimate prize in football, and to do that in that team, like, obviously I'm too young to remember it, but you look back in the likes of Clarence Seedorf and Edwin van der Sar, and obviously the two De Boers, and they were household names even into the early 2000s. And I just think back, or when I read back in that, I think what a team that must have been. So obviously you'll remember it more than me. Was there much excitement from A, signing Ronald de Boer, and B, signing a player for Barcelona? Because I can't get my head around the idea that Rangers can sign a first teamer for Barcelona.
At the time, it was huge. There was no doubt it was massive. There was a lot of hype around it. The most that I remember is people immediately talking about Frank coming at the same time, and at one point I think we thought that both the Boers were coming. But I mean, during that time, Rangers were signing some incredible players, especially when Dick Advocaat first took over. The players Rangers were signing was unbelievable. Especially players like Arthur Newman playing for Rangers. But De Boer was really hyped up because he came from that kind of the era of when Ajax were probably at the peak of their powers. When Ajax won the Champions League, the Ajax were fantastic at that time. So the hype was big, definitely big. I think you're right. When I heard he was coming from Barcelona, I think I was even a wee bit took back by it. But the excitement around him was big, and I think it only got bigger the kind of closer it came to him coming. So yeah, he was a fantastic player. So what we'll do now, Colin, is we will just jump into the matches that you've picked out, that you have chose the kind of most memorable to you, and as I say, it's kind of cemented your love for De Boer. So we'll just start with the first one. So we'll go to the 26th of November 2000, and it's Rangers v Celtic in the league. Rangers 5, Celtic 1. The starting 11 that day was Kloss, Renner, Konterman, Wilson, Amoruso, Newman, De Boer, Ferguson, Alberts, Miller and Flo. So, apart from the scoreline, Colin, what made this game stand out for you so much?
Sorry, when you talk about standing out, I'm just looking at that team and how out of place did Bert Konterman look and next to Reina, Amoruso, Newman.
Even Wilson, to be fair, mate.
So, again, this is one of my earlier memories for supporting Rangers. I think my earliest memory is the game we won the league at Parkhead in the 90s, and this is at this time when you're a wee guy, you only really remember the big hyped games or the games you remember seeing on TV. I hadn't been to a game at this point. I remember watching it on telly, and I do remember that we'd been studied that season 6-2 at Parkhead. That was the same season. And I remember thinking that Rangers, like that wee guy, I can't go to my pals if Rangers get done in again. And it's especially in the second half, they were phenomenal. And watching this game back, my memory does serve me well for even being at that age. Rangers were excellent in the second half. Looking back over the highlights, I actually forgot he missed a sitter early on. It was I find the Celtic keeper and the centre half, Rab Douglas and whoever it was, might have been that Tom Boyd. They just run into each other and De Boer goes through and left peg, half volley, but it skies it over the bar. I completely forgot about that. But he had a part to play in, quite a few of the goals. So the first goal he had a part to play in was Tony Andre Flo's goal for the corner. This is a great ball in. Ronald de Boer takes it for the left-hand side. Albert's back post, who we're going to come on to in a minute. Albert's nodded back post to Tony Andre Flo. It was strange. De Boer actually gets his goal for an Albert's corner. And we're going to talk about a couple of De Boer's headers. This is a great ball in for Alberts to the back post again, and De Boer runs in. When people ask me about Ronald de Boer, I don't instinctively talk about his aerial ability. I talk about how clever he was, his touch, how his range of passing. But when people ask me about De Boer goals, I automatically think about the amount of headers he scores, because he was great in there. And I know that sounds totally contradictory, but aye, that was an excellent headed goal. So I think this game, in particular, I do remember De Boer, Ferguson and Alberts as a three in the midfield being utterly dominant and just playing so well together. You know, like Alberts would be running for deep, Ferguson kind of doing that box to box, and De Boer was just kind of given free roam to support the striker and be an absolute menace. I think with the benefit of hindsight, when I look back in the highlights and remember what the adults around me, what they were saying at the time, De Boer was at his best when the players around him could get to his level. And I think fair to say maybe taking a bit of time for that to happen. But this game, I think with the Michael Moles goal in particular, Albert's runs deep to get the ball off Reina. But as Albert starts running deep, De Boer's already running by before Albert's even gets the ball. Albert's turns, looks up, and De Boer's away, and it's just that intelligence, the speed of thought that, you know, it separates a good player to an elite player, just how intelligent they are. I think that was the best goal for me as well. So Albert's long ball through, De Boer's already started running, and just one touch cross with his left foot in the area. That was a phenomenal game, phenomenal second half in particular.
Yeah, very much so. As you mentioned earlier on, Rangers had been scudded earlier on in that season. And Celtic were actually unbeaten coming into this game so far in the season. I think they'd only drawn twice. Every other game they'd won. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying. It was a kind of the players in that team's just the beggars belief sometimes when you think about who we used to have. I mean, Alberts, Barry, Renner. I mean, they were all fantastic that day, and it's obviously so was De Boer. I always remember that goal that Barry scored that day. And the way he ran away celebrating, I thought that's probably exactly how I would celebrate if I scored a goal against Celtic, because he was just looking like a wee boy that had just scored his first ever goal. I'll never ever forget that. But yeah, I would definitely say that's a good one to be able to fall in love with Rangers with me and fall in love with De Boer. It was an incredible game. So we'll move on to your second game now, Colin, that you've wanted to talk about, and it is Rangers v Hibs from the 20th of May 2001. So the team sheet that day was Kloss, Amoruso, Vidmar, Korneman, Rickson, Tugai, De Boer, Alberts, Newman, Wallace and Gale. So, Colin, why this game?
So this was a game I wasn't at the game. I didn't go to my first game till a wee bit later on, and I don't recall it being on telly. I did watch the highlights. It might have been on telly, but I only remember watching this for the highlights because it's the last game of the season of what was a pretty poor season. And I don't know if it was, I didn't realise that George Alberts was leaving right up until people started saying this was his farewell game. Also, you don't really keep on top of the politics and that when you're that age. But I remember thinking, oh, this is George Albert's last game. Wow. And again, the goals for this game, I remember watching in the highlights just how intelligent Alberts and De Boer and players in this team could be together. So this is another game where De Boer's involved in a few goals. Rangers are going to win 4-0. For George Albert's penalty, De Boer actually wins it. He gets through, the keeper just dives in, and it's weird. Like the keeper takes a move, clean wipeout, but De Boer kind of gets up, just like I knew that was going to happen. It was almost like he didn't do the usual shouting for a penalty, and he was just like, it was almost as if I absolutely meant that for when I started running. The hammer, he puts it bottom left. The next game, the next goal I remember, similar to what I was saying with the 5-1 game, Alberts puts a driven ball up to to Wallace. When Alberts looks up, De Boer starts running and Wallace cuts the ball into De Boer or cuts it back into De Boer, and it's just a tap in for him. It's just that knowing when to. It's one thing seeing like two passes ahead, but if that makes sense, for Ronald de Boer to know where Alberts is going to play the ball into and see that, I think that's just amazing, and I appreciate even more looking back. Also, when I'm a wee guy, I'm just like, yes, De Boer scores again. But when you watch back these highlights, it's just such clever football. But probably my favourite goal for Ronald de Boer comes in this game. There's a driven ball in for Lorenzo Amoruso, and at first it maybe looks like a bad touch for De Boer in the chest, but I think he means it. He chests it to take away for the defender who's up his arse, and he takes another touch up and he kind of turns on the volley. His back's to goal in the penalty box and he turns and just puts it top bin, and I think that's just, again, talking about intelligence to chest the ball away for the defender, and then the skill. There's very few players that could have done that in Scotland, and he was one of them.
He was a Rolls Royce of a player. He really was. The ball in from Amo, the chest, the touch, the turn and volley. I'll let you have it. He's your hero, so I'll say that he definitely meant that touch to turn to turn on Scotland, of course. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When Alberts and him were on the same page, it was incredible. Alberts is, again, one of the most intelligent footballers I've ever seen in my time following Rangers. He was a big hero of mine, Alberts. And when him and De Boer linked up, especially, it was frightening. They were, as you say, when Alberts gets the ball, De Boer's already on his way. He knows exactly what's about to happen. He knows the stages of play it's going to happen. In terms of being in Scotland, he was light years ahead against the defenders that he was kind of playing against. I would agree. It was a weird game, that one. We were very good, but it was the end of an era for some players. I say it was Alberts' last. I think Gio left as well. Two-guy is also left. So it was a strange day, but again, De Boer stands out by a mile.
I know with hindsight now that, like, or reading back on like the Advocat era and stuff, that there was maybe a bit of an issue between Alberts and Advocat, and there's maybe more motive behind football why Alberts was moving on. But I remember watching the highlights this game as a wee guy and just thinking, that young naivety. Why would Alberts want to leave? Like, look at the players we have, and we are Rangers, and there's that childhood innocence. But I just couldn't wrap, like, why is George Alberts leaving? I don't get it.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was gutted when I heard Alberts was leaving. It was heart wrenching. I was like, no, not a Hammer. I want a Hammer to stay. Gio went up. I think Van Bronckhorst was always going to go on to do different stuff, but especially with Alberts, I thought, no, I wanted him to stay. I wanted him to stay at Rangers forever. But I suppose when these things happen, I think obviously all in hindsight, when it comes to McLeish might have got even more of a different tune out of Alberts. Not that I was never one to criticise Alberts. I was still young, mind you, at the time, but I wasn't ever one to kind of criticise him. I've never ever criticised De Boer though, so it's quite a good one that you've picked, mate, to be fair. So we will move on to the third game that you've picked to speak about today, and it is Rangers v Dynamo Moscow on the 1st of November 2001. You get something about November, Colin?
Oh,
there's a few Novembers here. Just noticed that. So the team that day was Kloss, Rickson, Moore, Amoruso, Newman, Conterman, Renner, Ferguson, De Boer, Caniggia, and Torrey Andre Flo. So, Colin, when you first sent this over to me, at first I was this game's it's not ringing a bell. Not ringing a bell. As soon as I looked up the highlights for the game, the red strip, I was like, oh, aye, I remember what game you're talking about. So, what's your reasons for picking this game?
So, this is quite a bizarre backstory, right? So, this is another game that I remember I didn't watch on telly at the time, and I don't know if it was on telly or not, but I remember 1st of November, me and my pals were out collecting Bonnywood, all right? And I remember each year we take turns to go in and check the score, the Rangers. I don't know if like it wasn't telling, it might have been, my mum was just watching EastEnders or whatever, and I wasn't allowed to watch it. But I remember going in, and like one of us would be asking, like, or listen to the radio, like, like, what's the score? And at this point in time, all my pals were Barry, Ferguson, Daft. You know, they were all, and I was the only one that had De Boer in the back of my strip, and I was kicking about with my De Boer, my De Boer sip that night underneath my jumper, and I remember one of my pals coming out, it's just like, oh, that's Rangers scored, Ronald de Boer. And I started swaggering about like Conor fucking McGregor, honestly, as if it was me that had scored. And I was pure girls, just like, I tell you, De Boer's a man. And I just remember, I don't know why, if it was maybe get one up my pals, I tell you, De Boer's a better player, whatever. Just remember being so chuffed that Ronald de Boer has scored for Rangers. The first I seen any of this game was like, I think I was having my dinner the next night, and it was on the 6 o'clock news or whatever, and it was like, oh, Rangers beat Dynamo Moscow 4-1, and the highlight they showed was De Boer pegging the Russian midfielder, just turning and playing the ball into Torre Andrew 4 to, I think this was for the third goal, and I was just like, it's my guy, De Boer again. He's unplayable. Probably a bit of a weird reason to pick this game, but I just remember day to day has been so chuffed.
Yeah, I remember watching the highlights back myself. I think I again caught it on the news. I don't ever remember watching that game, and I remember I'd say it was just the red strip. I remember the red strip. It's a bit much of a collector's item now, I suppose, that strip. I don't think we used it very often. It was maybe only a couple of times we used it that season anyway.
No, it's a strip you forget about, isn't it?
Yeah, the pitch that night though was absolutely shocking. It was unbelievable, and you can see it in the one that De Boer sets up. Is it Lovenkrands? I think he sets up. Oh no, it's for Flo.
He
sets up Torre Andrew Flo. The way he turns, but even as he turns, the ball doesn't go anywhere, and he's got to adjust his feet to get away with it. But when you've got class like that, I suppose you can play on any pitch. It doesn't really matter what pitch you're on. So we'll just move on then to your next game. So this is from the League Cup semi-final in 2003, and it's Rangers v Hearts. Rangers winning 1-0. Now, I'll be honest, Colin, I don't remember this game at all, not even slightly, and I struggled to find any sort of decent highlights for it. So this one's pretty much on you, mate. So why why this game?
So you're absolutely spot on. This is not a memorable game by any means. If anybody's looking for the highlights of this, it's about on YouTube. There's first to 50. There's first to 50. The Rangers treble winning season, the one that Derek Johnson he presented. It's about 20 minutes into part 2 of that, if anybody's looking for the highlights. And the only highlight of this game is the actual goal. So the reason I picked this, Scott, this was my first ever Rangers game. And I remember I'd been chatting at the bit to go to a game, and my dad eventually told me he got tickets. I stayed just down the road for Hampden. I grew up just down the road for Hampden, about a 15-minute walk. So this was my first ever game. And it was a freezing February night, but I wasn't bothered at all. I was there seeing Rangers, and this was, on the back of winning the 2 cups the season before, and we hadn't won the league, but Rangers, even at this point, Rangers were phenomenal. I know it was neck and neck for the league throughout, but it just felt like that this Rangers team could, for me, in the eyes of a 10-year-old, this Rangers team could do anything. And there was me going to see them in the flesh for the first time. I mean, it was like destiny. Who got the goal that night? Ronald de Boer. Neil McCann picking up the ball, kind of deep into the Hearts half, around the halfway line, and just drives forward. And it's a brilliant ball in. Rickson makes a really, really good run to the back post for deep. Neil McCann finds him, and it's really clever for Rickson. He's seen De Boer making a late run, so instead of heading it towards goal, Rickson heads it back to the 6-yard box, and De Boer just taps in with his head. Another headed goal. But again, I think it's more just the timing of the run, because he was good at that, De Boer. You know, he didn't have pace, so you'd think, oh, he's not got pace, so try and make an early run. But he held off and he held off. He'd done it time and time again, letting defenders run and see where they were going, and then running into space that was left. And that's what he's done for this game. And I left beaming, absolutely beaming that night, thinking that my dad's got me a ticket for the semi-final. He must get me a ticket for the final then, but it was against Celtic and they were like gold dust, so there was no chance I was getting a ticket for that. But what a season to get my first game in, and Ronald de Boer and Barry Ferguson were phenomenal this season. I know we're going spoiler, the last game will be a game from this season, but even at this point, when we talk about players getting to De Boer's level and allowing De Boer to do his best, Barry Ferguson reached his level that year. I think if we're being absolutely fair, Barry Ferguson was the best player in Scotland that year, but De Boer was a close second, and they just connected. And it was, people talk about Ferguson having the single best midfield season in recent history, but I think it's the best midfield pairing in recent history for Rangers.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, Colin. I think De Boer that season, McLeish got a tune out of him that Advocat had failed to do. Whether it was the way Advocat played, I'm not sure, or the kind of unrest that there seemed to have been in the changing room at the time. De Boer was almost like a new man, I think, that season. Some of his play was brilliant. As you say, he wasn't blessed with blistering pace. His movement off the ball, his intelligence was just incredible. And as I say, Barry Ferguson for probably this season and the following season was the best midfielder in the world in my eyes. Barry, again, he was incredible. So, yeah, you just mentioned it there that the last game we're going to come to, Colin, is, again, from this season. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can guess what one we're just about to speak about. So it's from the 25th of May, 2003, Rangers 6, Dunfermline 1. The team that day was Kloss, Rickson, Moore, Amoruso, Newman, Ferguson, Arteta, Caniggia, De Boer, Moles and Avaladze, McCann and Thompson coming on from the bench. So why this game, Colin?
You and I spoke last night before as we were doing the prep for this show, and we were both saying how just get goosebumps watching back. And this sounds so stupid, but even Arteta's penalty, I still get nervous. You know, I know how it ends. I know we win the game and win the league, but it's just the nerves you get when seeing them making that run up. It's just remembering it, and I remember this game clear as day. It was quite funny. Just another bizarre backstory. My dad and my uncle, they were abroad. I think they'd booked a weekend away with whoever, and they were in Amsterdam. They watched this in Amsterdam, so I was left with my ma for the weekend, and my ma's family are all Celtic fans. You know, that's I had a rough gig growing up at my ma's family's parties, so went up to my uncle's to watch it. My Celtic supporting uncle and his two Celtic mad boys, and I got sent to the back room with, I mean, it's 2003, like, this before the big, like, everybody had a 50-inch telly. This was like a 12-inch shiter in this wee box room. I felt like Harry Potter, man, honestly, just sent to fucking Coventry to watch this with my Todd. But nonetheless, what a game. What a time I had watching this game. This game for me, Scott, it rolled everything that Rangers had done well that year into the one game. It was a sublime performance by everybody on the park in my eyes. Even Stefan Kloss pulled off a wonder save. You know, he's probably somebody that didn't get the credit that season because we were scoring for fun, but it's everybody done their job and they played so well. This is another game. De Boer, he's involved in so many goals. So the first one, it's a driven ball in for Lorenzo Amoruso, and a player's up his arse, but he just manages to get the turn. And we talk about that intelligence again that he had with Alberts. Claudio Caniggia he must have been about fucking 92 at this stage of his career, but he was still such a... And we all know, like, him and Maradona weren't maybe the healthiest of athletes, so what he put his body through, but Caniggia had a great season this year, and it's just how intelligent he was. So this was another player who got onto De Boer's level. As soon as De Boer gets the ball, Caniggia starts running into space. Ronald de Boer barely has to look up, and he plays the ball to Caniggia, who plays it to... Was it Moles?
Moles, yeah.
The Moles was the first goal, and it was an easy pass, but that was just great link up with A2. The second goal, and again, I think Rixton has to get a lot of credit here, but it's just such clever thinking for De Boer. He's on the right hand side of the byline. This is a game he had that free roam. Barry would do the kind of box to box, a lot of dirty work, and De Boer would just move left to right to centre and pick up the ball in dangerous areas. He's on the right byline, and it's a 1-2 with Rixton, and he plays it perfectly. Rixton has to run on, and he does slide in to get the cut back, and then Caniggia again with that goal. The next goal he's involved in, it's actually a De Boer header again. It's how many, that's three headed goals in 5 games that we spoke about, and another great ball in for Neil McCann. And I've got to in my notes here. It's like, it's not the first thing I think about when somebody asks me about Ronald de Boer, but it's just he was such a rounded player. Apart from pace, right, but just such a rounded player. You don't really think of too many technically gifted players who are so dominant in the air, especially in the opposition box. So the 6th goal, it's Arteta's penalty. It actually comes for a 1-2 with De Boer and McCann again, and perfectly weighted pass into Neil McCann, who runs on it at pace, and the defender has to make a decision: let McCann through and leave him 1-on-1 with the keeper, or bring him down. And again, it's just such a great pass and just a great eye. Also, we know what happens. Arteta takes the penalty and wins the league that year.
Does the celebration?
That's. I know we talk about Barry Ferguson in that 5-1 game running away like a wee boy, but I don't know if Arteta was like a disabled rapper or something. Like, I don't know what he was doing that game, but I'll let him off because it was such an important goal.
Yeah, it's an out and out classic of a game. I doubt we'll ever see something like that again in our lifetime. Winning the league by 1 goal in the end, as you say. De Boer was great that day. I think the whole team was great that day. It was one of them games that you feel that everything was just falling into place for Rangers. It just seemed that it was going to happen. I can't remember where I watched it. I'm pretty sure that was in my cousin's house. I seem to watch all the kind of games at my cousin's house. I don't remember fully. I'm pretty sure we were there. He'll tell me, I'm sure. But as you say, there's some of the play from De Boer was fantastic that day. A shout out to Amoruso though for the determination for the cross to get to Shota, who's nearly lying on the ground by the time that he heads that ball home. De Boer makes his mark for the 4th with what seems to have come a kind of signature header from him to finish up on 20 goals for the season for De Boer, which is absolutely fantastic. He is the highest goal scorer for Rangers that season. Does he win? Does he got most goals that season?
He's actually. I've got this written down because it just sums up, rightly so, Barry Ferguson and Ronald de Boer get the majority of the credits for this season. But you look at the goal tally, Ronald de Boer was top goal scorer in 20. Then it was Barry Ferguson in 18, and Arveladze in 16, Michael Moles in 14, Caniggia in 12. So many players just chipping in with that amount of goals. It's unreal.
So as you say, by the time we got to 5-1, Rangers had scored 100 goals. And of course, Arteta's famous penalty makes it 6-1 to Rangers. And then there's that weird the wee part as full-time whistle goes, and Ibrox wants to jump into party time, but we need to wait for the full-time whistle to come. A few minutes later, the full-time whistle comes from the Celtic game, and Rangers are champions. The only downside I would think to that season really is that strip. I hated it.
I know. It was horrible.
No Rangers strip. Just no Rangers strip.
No, there was... that was an absolute shocker. I had that strip and I had the Boer in the back of it as well. And it was a horrible home strip, but I tell you what, I loved that orange kit that we had that year. That was that kind of made up for it.
Exactly, mate, exactly. And it also led to the best post-match interview I've ever seen in my life from Chris Sutton. It was fantastic, and sometimes when I'm feeling down, I'll put that on just to give myself a wee cheer up. And that's us, Colin. That's us finished your games that you want to speak about with Ronald de Boer, and what a game to finish on. So I think it is clear to see why Ronald de Boer is your hero, Colin. He's a very impressive, very influential player, especially under McLeish in the 02-03 season. We might not have had de Boer at the peak of his powers, or he wasn't even at his very best the majority of the time he was at Ibrox, but he was truly a world-class footballer. I suppose it's only right that he played for the most successful team in football during his career, mate?
Absolutely. It was just a fitting club for such a talented player. You said world-class here, and I genuinely, and obviously... disclaimer, I am very biased towards Ronald de Boer, in case you haven't guessed so far. But I think he is the last player to be world-class while playing in Scotland. Celtic fans would argue Henrik Larsson, and, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's them, but there's no disputing he was, but I think he went up to that level when he went to Barcelona. I think while playing in Scotland, Ronald de Boer was the last player to be world class.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. When de Boer left, I think that was the last truly world class player Rangers have ever had. So if you would like to appear on the show, just get in touch with us via social media pages and of course, if you get any feedback at all, it'd be great to hear your insight. Be it good or bad. If you enjoyed the show, please like, comment and subscribe on Apple, Acast and YouTube. So it's just time for me to thank Colin for allowing me to do this show and for being my guest. So thank you, Mr. Gallant Few.
Scott, thanks very much for having me on for the pilot show. As I said, I was buzzing doing the prep for this, and it was sorry if the inner 7-year-old in me came out, but I just love talking about this time and that player in general. So thanks for having me on.
No, it's been great. Thanks very much, mate. And last but by no means least, thank you all for listening. I've been your host, Scott Carney. Join us again soon for another Generation Bear. We are the people.